Chapter 30A, Section 20B, following the declaration of state of emergency in the Commonwealth arising from the COVID-19 pandemic, the Cohasset Advisory Committee will meet virtually using Zoom technology. All votes will be taken by roll call. The meeting will be recorded. Chris, can I ask what the latest is on whether the Zoom meeting capability will be extended beyond this month? Do we know?
Tied up in the legislature.
As of the last I checked, the current rules expire Friday. The Senate passed a extension of the existing proposals. The House passed an extension that required every meeting to be hybrid, meaning in person and online at the same time. That is a prohibitively expensive proposition for pretty much everybody. We can run 2 or 3 hybrid meetings at the same time, but not any more than that at the moment with our technology. And we don't have the space for it either. So I hope that the House will, when the House and Senate get together and work this out, they won't go down that path. Maybe they'll encourage hybrid meetings or maybe fund towns to improve hybrid meeting capacity. The unfortunate reality is I'm not sure they're going to get to this before Friday. So it's very possible that things will slip back into mandatory in person next week. So I don't know. We're going to see what happens. And last time they were late, they retroactively gave everybody an exemption. So I would hope they would do the same thing. I don't remember what meetings are next week, but we're going to be playing it by ear every day.
Well, by the time we meet again, I would imagine that will have been settled one way or the other. So we'll hope that they make the right choice. All right. Well, as you know, go ahead, Jean.
I am still on some school mailings from the state, and I have something that says fiscal 2023 state budget bill passed by the Senate includes language to extend blah, blah, blah through December 15th, 2023. The budget bill passed by the House does not include the remote meeting extension. So I don't know what that means, but like Chris said, it may not go through by the expiration of the July 15th date.
Yeah, we'll just, we'll figure out what we have to do when we have to do it next. And we'll comply with the open meeting law as it then exists. So, but at least this time we're here virtually. So just a roll call of who's present. Adam Amon is not. Gina Stino.
Present.
Mike Barclay.
Present.
Fran Collins.
Present.
Patrick Kennedy.
Here.
Understand that Mark Maggi is not joining us tonight. Mary McGoldrick.
Here.
Meg Wheeler has sent a couple of emails saying she'd be a few minutes late.
Yeah, and she's actually trying to log on right now, Chris. So if you have a heads up, I think she's trying to do that.
Great. And I'm Rob Hillman, present. So the first item on our agenda is the year-end transfers, which is an act that we engage in every year. Our vote is required as to some of them. There was a brief presentation by Don to the select board last night that I stuck around to listen for. There wasn't a lot there. A lot of explanation because it is a fairly ministerial act. So rather than, as we all know, regrettably, Don is no longer an employee of the town, but he is helping us out on a consulting basis. But rather than bringing him back, I'm pretty confident that Chris can walk us through this. Is it possible that somebody, Chris, do you have the?
I can put it up on the screen.
Excellent.
I think Meg's coming in. Just give me just a second here.
Great. I have them too, but we better
And by the way, if I have any technical problems, both Rob and Mary, your co-host of the host will automatically flip to you if my internet connection, as it did last week, disappeared on me. So I'm officially attempting to promote Mary, but all right. Well, I've given her the access to jump in. So.
She may be driving. So
So again, either one of you can do that. Can also, I've hit her, I've clicked her a couple of times. So either one of you can also bump her up if you want to, if she has a problem getting in. All right, let me share the
Okay.
screen. So I can make this bigger. Can everybody kind of see that?
There we go. Okay.
All right, so there's $734,000. So just to give more context to what Rob was saying, so 5 or 6 years ago, the state did this whole Municipal Modernization Act. One of the things that changed was the process to do year-end budget transfers. And it used to have to go to town meeting. They changed it so it just has to go to the Finance or Advisory Committee and the Select Board. So that's what we've been doing. It's an annual thing. There's one area there's always transfers from, and that's the town manager budget keeps all the merit increases, union contracts, and even our bylaw people, staff have the ability on a wage chart to get a merit raise. It's a step. We call it merit. All of our steps are merit based. You have to achieve a certain score to get them, and that money sits in the town manager's budget, and then the raises are given out during the year depending on what people's reviews are. And at the end of the year, the money's transferred around to cover that. So that's an annual thing that happens. This year, it was particularly bad with snow and ice. We had a rough winter in terms of sanding and salting and plowing. This year, there was also a more use of council. We switched firms. So there was a lot more extensive use of council for Conservation Commission and for Planning Board. We're also in labor negotiations, so our labor bills go up during the labor negotiation period because not only do we have 6 active negotiations, but we have the joint labor an arbitration process with the firefighters. So that's driven up costs to a cyclical high. I expect those numbers will drop next year simply because we'll have resolved hopefully all of our labor contracts, and we'll be back to standard. So again, if you see most of these are small personnel adjustments that are coming out on the town manager budget. All of the reserve fund, again, there was no reserve fund transfers this year. So when the reserve fund's not used during the year, it's used at the end of the year to move around to balance these other funds. There's one number in here. It's the line 291. It's emergency management. What Don has done is he created a line in there for all these COVID related expenses that'll tie back to a grant, and he will do that later. So that 60,000 is just so he can close the books, and then during the year he'll be able to class most of that against grants. So that'll end up becoming free cash for next year. But he wanted, because he's not here full time anymore, he's on a consulting contract through his firm. He wanted to make sure the books can get closed first, and then he can do the adjustments afterwards. And then again, the other big ones were, as I said, snow and ice, police overtime was actually a little bit less than last year, believe it or not. And then in the fire department, we not only had some overtime costs, but the retirement of the prior chief kicked in a buyout of vacation, and he was the last person with a buyout of sick time. He was the last person with that right in town. So there was a $35,000 buyout of various time for him. Some of those costs, you can see the 35 and 94 amp to more than 50 were covered within the fire department budget. So that was good. As you can also see, some of the police department's expenses were also covered in their budget. So that was good too. The other big surplus area was in health insurance. And the biggest chunk of that savings, apart from the fact of conservative budget, was that Maya, which is our insurance provider, our group insurance provider, which is a Blue Cross Blue Shield underwritten policy, gave everybody a month premium savings because of all the savings they had generated the year before, because during the pandemic, no one was going to the doctors, which is not really a good thing. We got the town got a month premium savings, and of course that was shared with the employees too. But that's a fairly substantial amount of money. So that generated the lion's share of that health insurance surplus. So those are the transfers. Does anyone have any questions? And Meg is still out there, but
She mentioned she's going to be home in 5 minutes, and so she'll just log on then.
okay. All right.
Isn't getting a prompt to be promoted.
Okay, I'm trying. She's in her car and probably not showing on the mobile site. So
Question, if we say no to the fire department chief, former chief's buyout of his does he not get the money, or is that check already been cashed?
oh yeah, no, I mean, that's checks are. I'm sure that check was cashed 2 months ago, Patrick. I'm sure it was. I'm sure it's been spent. If it's not been spent, it's been banked. So
Troublemaker.
Well, I'll be sure to get a beer out of him on it.
Mike, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a question on the health insurance. How much of the 400,000 was the payment holiday?
Mike, I'd have to double check with Don. I mean, our annual healthcare costs are like $5 million. So I think the way Don described it was a fair chunk of it, not all of it, but a large chunk of it. So I would expect that it was. Again, I'm ballpark guessing that it was at least $200,000 to $300,000. And again, it was unexpected. It was great to have. And we also conservative budget that anyway. So that's not coming this year, at least in FY23. I've asked. There's a possibility we may get some savings from the healthcare again like that, but our rates actually went up this year. Because again, us and everyone else started to use healthcare a lot more dramatically again. So,
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is just given that it did go up this year in the budget, were we pulling? Yeah, we saved some, but now, I guess we don't have that savings anymore. And so going forward, we're kind of break even, and whatever future increases happen are going to just have to be part of the budget going forward.
the healthcare has been a real cushion for us the last few years, and not only allowed us to have more flexible budgeting, but it allowed us to have more flexible year end. That is highly unlikely to be the case in FY23. So we have to find that in other places that also just be tight. So again, snow and ice is something that if in a worst case scenario, we could just raise against you can always collect that. You can always put that on the tax rate for the next year as a separate line item. We've never had to do that since I've been here, but it can be done because you always have to pay the snow and ice bill. And again, we're not going to have any big buyouts of employees. There's nothing like the chief's contract anymore, and we've actually, we've had some retirements this year, which will hopefully reduce our expenses a little bit going into next year, and might even soften our healthcare expenses a little bit because retirees cost less typically.
Just on the snow and ice, if I remember correctly, our two big storms happened Saturday and Sunday nights, or Saturday into Sunday. Was it extra like time and a half for plow drivers on Sunday, like day of the week? Helped push those up maybe more than they would have been.
Nights, weekends, and holidays are the worst possible times to have snowstorms. Plus, there's also a double time trigger for holidays and for shifts that extend beyond a certain amount of time. And also, expenses. Salt can be very variable and in bad. Now, the good news is that now we have the new salt shed, we can buy basically almost a whole year's worth of salt and materials and stock it away. So we're not stuck with the spot market. And I can't tell you how much off the top of my head I was based on that, but I know we've had winters where salt prices have jumped for a variety of reasons and we got stuck. That won't be as much of an issue going forward because the new salt dome is up. So
Okay.
again, night, weekend, and holiday plowing is the work. We should always have storms between 9 and 5, Monday through Friday.
Right. Yeah, and both our big storms happened over the weekend, and I think one of them was a holiday weekend. So, okay, thanks.
Fran?
Yeah, I meant to mention that. I was gonna call you on that, Chris. Why aren't we filling up that salt shed now? This should be the cheapest time of the year to buy salt, I would think.
I know they planned, they were finishing work up there, Fran. I mean, they were still, I think they were still doing some finishing work up at their salt shed. I think they had to do some paving around the outside of it to set up the area. So I expected Brian and Carl looking to fill it as quickly as possible at the best prices possible.
Yeah, I mean, there's no point trying to buy salt in November, then it's gonna be pretty
Oh, no.
expensive.
I have every expectation they're planning to fill it as soon as they get their hands on some good price salt, but I think they're still doing finishing site work.
Okay.
On the
All right.
back.
Anything else?
And if no one's seen it, by the way, the new salt shed is a dramatic improvement of what was there, and that'll hopefully last us for decades. So
Yeah, it's an enormous building. Structure.
Holds it holds 4 times the capacity of the old one.
It looks very similar to a shed that we built on a ship. But I was chief engineer, we had this huge heavy lift ship with a massive open deck back aft. And we had a tent just like that. We had all sorts of military hospital equipment in there. And it went through a couple of typhoons and all sorts of bad weather, good weather. Those are rugged, those are pretty rugged structures. So I think that's a good move, putting that in there.
The temptation, of course, would be to have a rager in there before it gets filled with salt, but I suppose that would be wrong for us to suggest as a committee, so
Yeah.
we'll let that one pass.
I mean, there's
Oh, yeah.
no grand party for committees and boards.
Exactly.
There's a reserve transfer for that.
Celebrating the end of the fiscal year in style, but very good. Then I think we can do this in one vote. If someone would like to propose a motion.
I
think it
propose that
would
we
be-
accept the fiscal year 22 year-end transfers as presented.
That should do. Do I have a second? I think Mike beat you to the post, Mary. Then we vote by roll call. Gina Stino,
Aye.
Mike Barclay,
I,
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman is an aye, so it has been approved. So we have
Mary
done our-
McGowan and I too.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I skip you? I apologize. My own handwriting is the issue. So that's done, which is good. So the next item on our agenda is participation in the proposed joint committee regarding capital budget planning. You know how they say, at the statue in the Harvard Yard of John Harvard says 3 things and they're all false. It's not actually a statue of John Harvard. He did not found Harvard. Something else about it's wrong. This entry has a lot of those infirmities. There is not yet a specifically proposed joint committee for us to participate in, but there has been some discussion about it in a general sense. And I think we've discussed the need for long-term capital planning as a committee, as has capital budget, as has particularly recently the select board. And I suspect that committee will be coming together shortly. But there has been no vote to form it yet, or as far as I know, a specific proposed structure. So I was going to ask Chris to discuss it a little bit, but I saw Mary's hand first.
Just a quick question. After I signed off last night at 7:30, I did watch some of the select board meeting. So did they, but I didn't wait to see if they voted on anything. Were there any determinations made last evening?
I do not have firsthand, non-hearsay, non-speculative knowledge to that effect. Chris, did you? Can you answer
So, yes, on a number of things, I have to go back and really sift through my notes to kind of fully appreciate where those were. I know there was, I believe if I recall, and again, I have to go back and sit through my office with things. I was a little off today. I was not in the office today. So they did support this creation of this committee, and I thought that they asked me to pull it together. I have to go back and reread my notes. But they didn't vote on any particular projects per se. They just talked through them, and they did set up some kind of sidewalk working group with Corey, and they talked about continuing with Elm Street with some kind of a group, and they reestablished the zoning bylaw working group with a slightly different format. And they tentatively agreed to have KP do the work, though I have to get something more formal. So there were a number of things. The meeting was 4+ hours when you exclude the executive session. So I do have to sort through some of my notes.
So my impression is that we're waiting for the select board to suggest a format and a charge, but I suspect that the format would likely involve a member or two from the obvious boards, select board, us, and capital budget. Perhaps some participation. There should be participation in school committee, and water and sewer are the other big capital intensive committees. And I think perhaps as an advisory committee, we should get involved in the formation to some extent. So I'll have a conversation with the select board, see what it is that they're planning to do in terms of setting it up and when and with what sort of a charge. And unless somebody has other suggestions, if I think that we should have input as a committee, I'd be happy to call a meeting. We obviously can't all talk amongst ourselves because that would be serial deliberation. But we can, we can speak to it if we need to. Does anybody have any thoughts on this? Direction, ideas? All right. Like I said,
Thought question.
oh, I'm sorry, Patrick. I didn't
My
see you.
thought is, as the person who's been taking minutes for the last year, my thought is that we could authorize you and, for example, like Mike Barkley, who's been on the capital budget committee liaison and doing a lot of our work on capital, to just have those discussions and not have to call a formal meeting. I mean, I would trust you guys to represent our interests, or some other working group of 2 people, including the chair.
I'm good with that. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm happy to be a participant if everybody feels comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think you're uniquely suited. So we'll get started having that conversation. We'll figure out to whether and to what extent anything we do is subject to the open meeting law and do the right things. That probably needs a vote. Patrick, do you want to convert that into a motion?
Sure. I move that the advisory committee authorize Rob Hillman and Mike Barkley to have preliminary discussions with the select board and any other boards about a possible new committee to discuss, or that would be charged with capital and long-term investment issues for the town.
Second.
Fran is a second. Roll call vote, in which I'll try and get everybody this time. Gina Stino,
Aye.
Mike Barclay.
If I can vote myself onto a committee, yeah.
I think so.
Working group,
A
Working group. Fran Collins,
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman is an aye. I mean, we'll participate in sort of forming the working group, and then we'll make a determination of which ones of us will be participants, and work in on the charge, which in its broadest scope is looking at, revenue streams and capital projects and budget expansion going forward, and trying to reconcile all the above. So that'll be easy. good. I don't think there's much else to say about that now, other than that it's inchoate and we'll report back. So the next item on our agenda is discussion of capital proposals relating to town hall, field study, and Elm Street improvements. And I put this on our agenda when I saw these items on a select board agenda for a meeting that the select board conducted last Thursday, wherein they had put these items on their agenda with references to potential votes. And I thought, and I should say that that agenda also made a reference to a potential ballot question for debt exclusion on the November ballot, which would have needed to have been squared away by early August. And I thought if that was a timetable that the select board was going to propose, it was important that we discuss that right away. The Thursday meeting occurred. I watched it. I'm not sure I have a completely accurate takeaway of what I saw and didn't see, but what I don't think I saw were votes that represent an intent to try to get a ballot, a debt exclusion in front of the town in November. So this went from, a crisis or potentially a crisis to just an item. So I think that these matters all fold into our prior discussion about capital budget planning. But there may be reasons as these projects advance a little bit for us to maybe address them separately as an advisory committee rather than just as part of that package. Chris, do you have anything to add about my lack of understanding of where the select board is at exactly and sort of what the order of these projects is likely to be?
Well, I think where the select board is a bit of a work in progress too. The project that's the furthest along town hall. It's they're at 80% design. They're working on getting the construction manager at risk on board to help get the project the pencil sharpened. That said, in order to get a fully pencil sharpened price, it's got to be some degree of getting ready to move forward on it. I think that's the next step. The town will have to decide if it's going to go to bid. Is it going to go forward? And I think that's a conversation for the next couple of months on that.
Just to jump in, that actually does jog my memory. So with the town hall project, the point was made, and I think correctly several times, that time is money, particularly in this environment, although it's possible, everybody has their view of our costs going to continue to go up at this rate, our construction materials costs come down, et cetera, et cetera. But delay, generally speaking, is not helpful. So the order of operations is to obtain CM at risk, a construction management company at risk, and enter into that contract, and then roll up the project cost through that process. And then that would be ripe potentially for a debt exclusion. Is that a more or less accurate summary of the timeline, Chris?
I guess.
Yeah, okay. I think the answer is that there's nothing in front of us now with respect to town hall, but it may be the first one to the post. Mike and then Fran.
Yeah, I guess you sort of answered my question. So from what I understand, there's town hall, roads, and a field study that were all being talked about.
That's correct.
Is the intent to wrap them all together into the debt exclusion, or do them, let each one stand on its own merits?
So I don't know that so there's not going to be a debt exclusion vote in the fall. To the best, if there's going to be something, it'll come at a special election or in the spring. There's not enough time to get something together for November. So how they'd be packaged, I don't know, Mike, and there's been a lot of conversations. I know that there's been some conversations that a bound up ask will be better. One of the challenges with any town hall project in any community is it doesn't have a natural constituency like the schools or the public safety building or even fields do, right? Unless you come into, and it is actually, literally functional. It's kind of like, you don't think about your electrical system, right? Until it fails, or your internet connection until it fails.
Or
That's
your elevator.
Yeah, or your elevator, which has failed in town hall. By the way. So that said, those conversations have not reached any more than hypothetical. They've not drilled. There's been, I'm sure there's side conversations going on. Just as people spitball, I think that these are the kind of conversations that this kind of committee would work through, I think, and try to recommend something that everyone can get behind. I think that the most effective approach for any of these things would be some kind of unified effort. When I say that, I mean unity of purpose, that some kind of consensus is built by all the major committees that these are the top projects of what needs to get done. The one that's the biggest expense by far and the furthest away in terms of planning is the schools. That could be a multi-year, even if the MSBA, the Mass School Building Authority, takes jurisdiction this fall sometime or this winter sometime, it's still a couple of years away at best, and there's no guarantee they're going to do that. And again, we're talking about a project that's 10 times larger than the town hall project.
And I do want to address the school project separately at the end of this budget item. But I think the answer is that, Mike, that it hasn't been determined how they'll be presented. But as an advisory committee, I think we need to be prepared to check in on each of these projects and be part of the conversation about how they get presented to the town, because that's our job. Fran, I thought your hand was up.
Yes, you did, yeah. Well, just as a recollection here, at the time when the last town hall rebuilding committee was together, there were a number of capital items that were rolling off that were going to be paid off. So at this point, now we're what are we, maybe 5 years down the road from there? It seems like forever. So there should be, go ahead, if 4, yeah. So there should be plenty of room for a deferred budget on that without having any particular effect on the tax rate. And that's the key thing. And we only lost it by a few votes a lot. It was just tragic. Then it was our own fault, Mary, and us on the committee, it was our own fault that we didn't, act more aggressively in promoting it, because it certainly passed the town meeting and we only lost by a few votes in the town election. But here we go. It's 4 years later, and it's up over 17, probably 17, $18 million now. Just like it was forecast way back then by the people who stopped it. So you're right, Rob, we got to keep in mind that we do have, it's not going to have a big impact on the tax bill itself, the town hall thing, and it's got to be done. I don't want to spend any money, but it's got to be done. And we need to really keep on top of whoever it is that needs to be kept on top of. I think the committee that's doing it now is doing a good job, but we got to be sure that we can keep everybody else at bay and get this thing rolling. As far as Elm Street goes, I think we need 2 new sidewalks on Elm Street and pave it and Albert. That's plenty, but that's my opinions.
Mary, I see your hand up.
Yeah, a couple things as we look at kind of these big infrastructure projects. Obviously, part of the conversation we have, if there's any group that's formed with the select board and capital, will be integral to this. Obviously, having once we're able to find a replacement for Dawn and have although the forecasts are all there in terms of the next 5-year forecast and so forth, that will be helpful. I would really like to see us, if it's amenable to capital budget, working along with them maybe together our two committees as we review these projects as they come forward, rather than having them have to go do a little dog and pony for us and a dog and pony for capital budget. I think there could be some real benefit there. And we each have slightly different perspectives, but the same goal. So I would just like to see that happen. I am concerned that there seems to be a tenor that as members change, priorities can change. And there's been a lot of investment in the last 3 to 5 years with both the town hall committees and the master planning committee and the Elm Street corridor and the harbor project. And I think we should honor that investment in both time and money.
Okay. Mike, your electronic hand is still up, but it might be a leftover. There you go.
I was just gonna ask Chris, how do we handle, not at the end of the day that it really matters what the rating agencies think, because they're not the ones buying our debt, but how do we manage communications with the rating agencies?
So we do a call periodically, Mike. We do a credit review call. We always do one if we're going to do a big issue. We haven't done we haven't done a major review with them probably. Well, we did one maybe a year ago, I guess. The biggest one we've done since I've been here was our full town tour that got us AAA. We did a real big push for that. That was like 6 years ago. But they review us annually anyway. But there's usually only a big review when we're heading out for debt. Up until this point, I mean, don't get me wrong, AAA is great. It's something important, and it's important to maintain. It hasn't benefited us in an interest rate sense very much. It will start to do that now. I mean, the rates are starting to pull away, and we're going to get a better interest rate being a AAA credit. The town just doesn't do a lot of borrowing. What we've been doing when we do our little issuances, we've been doing what's called State House notes, which they go under a blanket, like a pre-approved process, and we pay that way. And so we haven't really had to go to the open. I mean, there's still people bidding on them. It's just it's a simpler process. We haven't had to, go out and aggressively. We are financial advisors, so they sell them, and bond counsel reviews. So, but we do a full, we do a full blown review with their rater. In fact, it's the same person I used to deal with in New York for my town. It's kind of funny. He moved on to New England. So I've worked with him on and off for about 10, 15 years. So but that's, so we do it. And I expect that, and again, we've been letting our financial advisor and our bond counsel know that some of these projects are looming, so that if we have a market issuance that's multiple millions of dollars, that we're going to want to get ahead of that and make sure we have, get a really nice presentation for S&P and make sure that everyone likes us financially.
Okay. Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, so I sort of started that with town hall. With respect to the field study, I don't know whether anyone's seen it. It's been linked to various things. It's on the town website. It is a comprehensive field study. As far as I can tell, it refers to supply and demand for fields and considers virtually every potential development permutation of fields that could be arranged for, including on land that the town doesn't own but could perhaps obtain, et cetera. So it's the menu. It's not the order, and nothing's going to the kitchen yet, to torture the analogy with that. But I suspect there's going to, my sense is that that's something that people are going to want to see moving forward sooner rather than later. I wonder whether there isn't a productive meeting for us to have later this summer with somebody from the rec board, somebody from, somebody to present or maybe it's premature, out of this field study, what are the priorities? What is likely to go to town meeting when? Because that's really our job. Our charge refers to things that are on their way to the town meeting. Chris, I see your hand up.
I would encourage that session, Rob. I think getting this stuff worked on in advance is really going to be helpful. It does seem from the presentations that have taken place that there's a lot of things in that study. It's available on the website for anyone who wants to take a look at it. If you can't find it, let me know. There's the Milliken Field redo, which would add 4 or 5 tennis courts, some pickleball courts, and parking. I think is something that's I think being very highly reviewed, and there's a possibility of adding 2, kind of redoing the field at Deer Hill to effectively make it not effectively turn into a turf field with a softball component, which would give the school district another all-weather, year-round competitive field, and then another one across the way, kind of on the Osgood site, another field over there. It's a little smaller, but it would still be able to be used for elementary sports. I think those are I think the ones that are getting the most traction at the moment. There are other proposals out there that are very interesting. Some of them are kind of expensive, but one of them would build a beautiful complex on another piece of land potentially if it was available. So, but if you'd like Michelle to come in and present, and I would encourage you to get the Recreation Commission and your liaisons for the schools, might want to reach out to your counterparts and just see what their vibe is. Are they interested in this happening? I would think that the schools would be potentially supportive of more field space. On the other hand, I think their priority is new buildings, not the fields. And so I'm not sure if that would conflict with their goal of that.
Fran?
Yeah, I'd like to see the schools spend some time and interest in finding a place to park their buses up there at the Deer Hill School and the Osgood School. There's plenty of room in there to put bus parking.
I second that.
Yeah, this is paying $40,000 a year to park buses out on State Road. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
We got plenty of land. So we need to get on that. And we need to get them on. I don't know who can build a fire under them, but it's got to be done.
There are discussions, Fran, as to doing something more long-term with that.
Good.
So.
I suppose that sneaks into the emanations from penumbras of our agenda item for fields. Park a bus on a field.
See,
So, and I know that's something that's important because it's a big annual bill. So if it's okay with everybody, when we get to the discussion toward the end of upcoming meetings, I'll suggest one agenda item would be for somebody to come in and talk us through the field study and how plans are forming and how it's going to be financed. Because if it's a debt exclusion, there's a vote and there's a town meeting. If not, and that puts it really into the middle of our jurisdiction. If not, perhaps a little less so. But I got the sense that depending on the breadth of the effort, it would be a matter that we should pay attention to. So I'll put that on our list. Lastly is the Elm Street improvements, and roads generally got a lot of discussion at the select board meeting. And it's not clear to me that the Elm Street issue or roads generally are immediately heading for a town meeting. I mean, the town has a bundle of money set aside for roads that hasn't been spent yet. I mean, are we seriously thinking about, well, even if we have a debt exclusion vote, it would be well after this upcoming town meeting. But how much, Chris, attention should we be paying to Elm Street specifically and roads generally as an advisory committee?
I think it's always good to pay attention to all things. That said, if you wanted me to prioritize them, I would say that Elm Street is something, it's a gateway road that was identified in the master plan and by the master plan implementation committee, the master plan itself and the harbor committee. Now, what that permutation is, I don't know. Now, we know that it got dug up because it was utility work done. And we know that the project at the end of the street is going to continue, right? So whether or not a total redo of it before that project is done completely is maybe not necessarily the best timing. That said, it should, that work should be lined up. One of the things that's still in debate is state funding. The governor did announce a very large bill called the Forward Act, co-estimated over $700,000 in that bill, including $550 for Elm Street. We had applied for a Mass Works grant, didn't get it. And the governor gave a lot of communities that were close but no cigar and a lot of grant programs money in that bill. Unfortunately, the state the House stripped them all out because they want them to be member items, not the governor's items. So I do that Representative Mosquito has added those back in for us. So whether or not they stay in though, I couldn't tell you. I mean, I don't know if Cohasset's on Speaker Mariano's radar screen. I hope it is. If the town does get 550 Front Street, it does change the dynamics a bit. If it doesn't, it's going to be an interesting conversation. In terms of roads, we've put out more information. And by the way, are you folks getting that end of the week update that I do or not? Yes, good. And Justin is doing some more videos, so he's doing a little more catchy stuff. I hope people are catching that too. If you're not seeing it on Facebook, on the town website, we have a new news blog, so you can see a lot of the stuff on the webpage now that you can only see before on social media. So one of the things we're talking about is paving. Sawyer Street is going to be paved this summer. Pond Street's going to be dug up and repaved, at least partially, and it'll be fully repaved next year. They have to add new gas service. Apparently the town's demands for gas have increased. So they're going to dig up a comparatively new road and then pay to fully replace it, though. It won't be fully replaced till next year. Beechwood, there's water main work being done there, and there's already been gas main work. So that'll be repaved next year. There's funding for that. Sawyer will be end to end once this work's done, hopefully in August. And South Main is pending the sewer commission's decisions on sewering South Main. I mean, Fran lives that every day. It's right outside his front door. That said, we can't do anything with the road. We don't want to dig up a brand new road if the sewer commission decides to sewer that. So unfortunately, the roads that are in the most disarray, and they're all because of utility work, are Elm, Main, Sawyer, Beechwood, Pond, right? You can't, I can't even get to town now. I have to go all the way around because North Main is shut down because of the gas main work, right? So, and that'll be redone. The final payment will be done next year. Cohasset had the highest per capita gas leaks in the state of Massachusetts 5 or 6 years ago. I don't know if people knew that. Not deadly. They weren't going to kill people, but there were leaks. So getting the gas infrastructure repaired is good. Unfortunately, it's affecting pretty much every road that everybody drives on at one point or another. So I think there's a perception that things are worse. And by the way, they are worse, but they'll be better soon, and there's a plan for it. Sidewalks, though, are the ones that we don't have a budget for. The town has never had, to my knowledge, a sidewalk budget or plan, though there's been a lot of discussion about that. The Complete Streets program prioritized that. The Master Plan Implementation Committee prioritized some areas. So if the town wants to do a funding mechanism for sidewalks, that would be something new, because we don't have that. Sidewalks, believe it or not, cost substantially more than roads. They have to be built to different standards, and it's the mobilization cost is more, believe it or not. It's finer work, particularly putting in granite curbs or whatever else. It's much more expensive.
It also often involves takings, doesn't it?
Well, in Cohasset, it's very tricky, right? Sometimes it does, and what would be even worse is if it involves ledge or swamp. What's made I'm sure everyone's been on Sawyer Street sees that we're adding a piece of sidewalk that's been talked about for many years from King Street down to 3A. Unfortunately, that abuts a wetland, so the Conservation Commission required permeable paving, which costs 3 or 4 times as much as regular paving. And then it turns out there was some drainage. There were some pipes that weren't quite where we thought they were, so they had to be relocated. So some of the drainage had to be relocated. It's a typical Cohasset thing, right? That there's the 100-year-old plans don't necessarily match the realities when we dig them up. That stretch, which is fully funded, by the way, sidewalk, was pricey. Brian uses a very, very rough back of the napkin estimate of about $1 million a mile for sidewalks, and that could go much higher if there's takings. When we did the Cunningham Bridge, we had to do temporary takings just for construction purposes. They cost tens of thousands of dollars for strips of land that were only temporarily taken. I shudder to think of what it would cost if we were taking property in front of any home on Beach Street or Jerusalem or Atlantic, or for that matter, Beechwood, or King Street. If we end up having to do a taking, people can donate the land to us. I mean, and people are most certainly free to do that. But if they don't, I don't know what it costs.
So I see Mike's hand up.
Yeah, Chris, just a question around process. So pick a street, we identify a street, there's got to be infrastructure work done on it. Is the money then budgeted and set aside for paving for that specific street? Because when I was listening to Brian, it sounded like for Elm Street, it hadn't been put away. And I didn't know if that's the case with all the streets, because it just seems to me that if you're digging up a street, regardless of where it is, you gotta complete the process by having the paving budgeted and set aside, ready to go.
So the money for repaving is there. The money for making it fancy is not there, right? So if we were gonna just do an overlay on Elm Street, we could do that. An overlay is a grind that, but if we have to do like a reconstruction, like the conversation about that part of March and Atlantic up the road, right? If that has to be reconstructed, it's far more expensive. The town is fortunate and unfortunate in some ways because we have a lot of ledge. So our roads are built a little differently than some other communities. Sometimes they're sitting around on rock. There's drainage, but where I was in New York before, every road was dug down, it had the base. So our roads want to be built that way, but there's stretches of road that you can't get the normal base and of course, and all that done because it's just not possible. So when Brian was saying the money wasn't there, it really is for to make it nice. Okay, to put trees and granite curbing, we don't budget for that stuff. So we could repave Elm in the spring if we wanted to, for just an overlay course. And again, so the answer is yes, it's planned ahead. We coordinate with all the utilities, so it's kind of like, what are you planning to do? What are we planning to do? So we kind of line it all up. So we make sure that water, sewer, and gas get into the street at the same time or when the same rough time, and then we pave it. And then with National Grid, we've been lucky because they've been very aggressive. Brian's been an aggressive negotiator to get them to give us money, and we do it. We can get the road paved cheaper than they can, and we can do curb to curb. So we want curb to curb every time if they dig stuff up, and Brian's been kind of lucky with that. So yeah, they are planned ahead. That said, sometimes things happen too, right? A water main might break. And sometimes like with Pond Street, the gas company comes in and says, we want to dig it up. And we said, sure, write us a big fat check and we'll repave it curb to curb when you're finished and get it done before school starts.
Okay, thanks.
Fran?
One of the things that a lot of people don't know is that when we dig up and do a major main replacement, water main, gas main, electrical service, whatever it happens to be, we usually don't do any major paving until after a year after that trench has been filled, so that dirt gets properly compacted. And now when we pave, we're not going to have great big dips and hoops in the thing. And then the next thing that we always have done here for years and years, it's a good move, is that once a street is repaved, we don't allow it to be opened for 5 more years unless there is some serious overriding issue that says we got to open it up. But so when we do pave the roads, and right now they're in as bad a shape as I can remember in a long time. But and all that Chapter 90 money is available for the paving. And we do, what do we do, about 2 or 3 miles every year, I think is what the normal procedure is. But there is a method to the madness, and in the end result, we have pretty good roads and it works out well. But some people don't understand how and why we achieve that goal. So anyway.
I had a really short memo that I could circulate to all of you that I did with the select board, like a 1-page kind of summary of roads. 33 miles. We have 33 miles of public way. We do about a mile and a half a year, 20-year cycle to repave it. That's the quick summary of it. And most of
always work pretty well.
Yeah, and most of the roads are big. I mean, it's Maine and Sawyer and Elm and Pond. There are some other more obscure ones, Linden, Rustic, all in there is a public way. Fair Oaks, however, is not a public way. Right? And many of the side roads that people live on that were carved out, the cul-de-sacs and little dead end streets, those are almost always private ways. So the town has another 12 miles or so, or 14 miles or so of private way, which are mostly the smaller roads.
Mike? Okay. Anybody else? So I do think we should keep an eye on the developments, particularly with potential funding and any decision points relating to these larger projects. I did watch so much of a select board meeting as a DPW, presented a lot of what Chris just told us. And, it was useful to know because having some context for bumping down a road is useful for everybody. I would nominate Short Street across the street from me as perhaps the worst street in town. But I remember when I was a kid, my father would argue against having our road paved because the cars would go 50% faster. But I suppose that can't be a matter of town policy. Bad roads save lives is probably not a bumper sticker that's going to get a lot of use. But, if you want to use it, it's on the house. So those were the matters that I put on the agenda from the select board, but I think sufficiently connected with capital proposals and capital projects. Our school building facilities committee made a submission to the MSBA. We had invited that committee to come and talk to us about what they intended to do, and they were unable to do so. My personal feeling is that that proposal was done to catch some deadlines, which isn't to say I don't know enough about it to say whether it may be the very model of a proposal, but it was done very quickly. And it wasn't vetted as far as I know with other committees. I would suggest that we invite them to come talk to us, present what they presented to MSBA and explain kind of where they're at and where they see this going. The most useful, and I think I might have even sent a link around about this, John Lemieux from Vertex, who is our owner's representative on some projects. And I know from outside of Cohasset, I think he's a very capable guy. He gave a really, really good explanation of how the MSBA process works. Maybe if we do have that meeting, I'll send the link around rather than trying to drag him in. We can get the benefit of his explanation of it. But I think it's time now, given the scope of that project and the various approaches to it, before that we get on board before the course is set. Mary?
Yeah, yes. I just wondered when we would anticipate hearing from the MSBA, because that obviously makes a difference about whether this is dead in the water or not.
I'm not comfortable giving a firm answer to that. I think that's why we have that group in to talk to us. I think that's the questions that they should be able to ask or answer. And if we either get John or we review, what John had presented earlier, and maybe we should get him just because, you'll have questions that other people may not have. There is a process. There's a whole grid about how your project gets ranked, what priority you're put on, how much of your project's going to get funded. They look at a lot of factors. Those of us who were around when the current library was still a school, when the decision was made, when MSBA agreed to fund the new Osgood, the current Osgood school, that project was ranked 14th in the Commonwealth because that was the MSBA's opinion of the condition of the Ripley Road School. So they don't go by, date of filing starts some deadlines, but the date on which you get funded is really, my understanding, pretty confident in this, is based on MSBA's assessment of how bad a problem they're dealing with. And that's appropriate, I think. Jean?
Several years ago, maybe even been when you were still on the committee, Mary, we had them come and do an assessment of the buildings. And it was actually rather surprising and illuminating that our buildings were rated 1s, which was good condition. We did have a few things that had to be addressed, but we addressed them. And it was things like labeling the elevators in a certain way. And there was really not a lot that had to be fixed. So I would be interested in seeing that. And I would hope that that was done by this committee.
It
Right.
was, I'm sorry to interrupt, Rob.
No, I was interrupting you. Go ahead.
That was done. There was a report that they gave to the school committee. If their minutes are up, we could maybe find it.
Yeah.
But we can certainly ask the committee if it's there, because they did have that same assessment done. I think it's 1 through 4 that they rank things. The other thing that I would just like to address, and the select board addressed this too, which I think is a pretty valid point. Putting money into the fields is an interesting little situation right now, because they did mention if they were to rebuild the high school, Alumni Field would most likely be the staging area. So then that would all hop over to Milliken. Now, whether it just, there is a little bit of a domino effect.
Right.
So I think getting a better handle on all that would be great to have, and before the 11th hour, as you said, Rob.
Yeah, so I'll get to more questions in a minute, but I see us having a meeting with field study presentation and a school building committee or school facilities committee discussion. I see Mike's hand, but did anybody else know? Mike?
I was just gonna say, so when the East School was built in Hingham, which was the first project that was done under the new MSBA, MSBA changed up how they funded, where it used to be they would sort of fund infinitely whatever projects, and now they just set aside a certain amount of money, and then you have to compete for those projects. I remember one of the key things, so 2 things that are tricky about it is you have to file with them, and then once they approve it, you only have a certain amount of time as a town to vote to go ahead with it. And it can sometimes mess with the scheduling of your town meeting. And I think we had to do a special meeting for the East School in Hingham. So it's a very tricky process. And one of the things that, having seen both the East School and the middle school in Hingham, is the MSBA wants successes. They want towns where if they approve to go ahead with it, they want to feel pretty good that the town's going to actually vote and approve that too. So it's an interesting timing dance that goes on with that process.
Fran?
Yeah, I'm concerned that I was led to believe a while ago that they were hiring a group of people to do a survey of the schools to see what kind of condition they were in. And they presented their findings to the selectmen. It was back in, I forget when it was, not too long ago. And it sounded like we were in imminent danger of all these schools didn't meet this requirement, didn't meet that requirement, and on and on and on. And I'm wondering, how many of these requirements do we really and truly have to meet to provide good education for our students? This is ridiculous, but in my travels all over the world, I've seen people that live in schools that have dirt floors and they have to share a seat. So, and the kids get educated. So I'm not anti-education. I'm very much in favor of it, but I want to make sure that we're not sugarcoating something that really maybe the plain vanilla might be okay. So how do we know? How do we get to the bottom of what is really required as opposed to what would be nice? Mary.
I think Fran's chair now, Rob. I'll see if I can access the survey, and I will that will probably answer a lot of questions and be the quickest way, because things are obviously that are 1s and 2s are not in urgent need. Things that are 3s and 4s are a little bit more of a concern, and some of the 4s you're in violation, and that's a big concern. So I'll try to get a hold of it and send it around.
Well, that's what I need, Mary, exactly, because the whole thing seemed to me, my goodness, everything is terrible. And but if they had, and maybe they did explain 1s and 2s, and maybe I went right over my head. But anyway, thank you.
Yeah, I think those are questions for that, to look at the studies and then to ask the committee. I'm sort of interested in those issues also. I heard, discussions of what about our schools is problematic and obsolete, and I wanted to hear more explanation. It wasn't immediately intuitive to me, but and I think I said this in another meeting or to somebody on the school committee, or perhaps the superintendent, is that the problem with being a school official is every single person in town pretty much has gone to school, and we're all experts. And I think we need to both resist that and assert it, because we all do have that experience. And I think we can ask much better questions. And I'm looking forward to doing that, because I haven't heard a cogent explanation of the whole thing yet. So we'll do it. We'll put it on the schedule. Anything else about this topic, Mike?
I was just going to say, Fran, based on what I read, it looked like the graduating seniors this year were quite successful getting into a lot of really good schools.
Oh my,
Quality of the
oh my
education seems
Lord.
to be pretty good.
What a surprise, Rob.
Yeah, what a surprise.
I was I was really impressed. Mary, is that a hand or?
That is a hand.
That is a hand.
If we could put on our list, and probably for, I don't know where we're planning this next meeting, but probably for August. When I was listening to, I think it was the last Thursday's select board meeting, and the town hall presented. And the OPM was just talking about the next set of numbers that they were waiting on. It would be helpful to hear about that, whether that's a meeting that we sit in with the select board. That's always an option too, to not make extra work for folks. But I think knowing that, I don't know, I know special town meeting is a conversation probably next in the agenda. I don't know if anything is going to be coming up for that, but regarding town hall, but it would be good to have the most recent information.
I think that makes sense. So we could probably maybe do a longish meeting and put 3 items on the agenda and just keep it efficient when we can, and let the questions roll when it's appropriate to do so. I'll see. I think I have 3 topics down for a potential next meeting or meetings. Anything else?
I was just going to say, I don't think I'll go back to, it happens every year. It shouldn't be called special town meeting.
I fall town meeting. Maybe we'll just start calling it fall
This
town
fall
meeting.
town meeting, it's
Exactly.
not special.
It is by statute. It's if it's not annual, it's special. But you're right. And that became a talking point the last time around in an unfortunate kind of way. So yeah, I agree. Our annual and reliable and widely publicized and well posted fall town meeting.
I think our bylaw refers to the annuals being in the spring as well. And in fact, there was not a fall town meeting during the first year of COVID, 2020.
And there wasn't, I mean, going back, I remember when having a special in the fall was a decision that every year, minus COVID, was an affirmative decision that the town made to organize, to make the spring annual town meeting less ghastly, taking things off that agenda and make it more efficient. It's a good system, but you're right. There are 2 town meetings and none of them are a surprise, which I think is what your point was, Mike. We don't have a surprise town meeting. It's not in the bylaw. So, so if it's all right with everybody, I move on. I had a discussion with Chris about a forecast of issues to be raised at the town meeting formerly known as special. And I was particularly concerned is the wrong word, but I had been watching a meeting of a bylaw committee, the committee Tom Callahan's on. And and there was a discussion about, I think, 12 articles relating to zoning and changes and a plan to get there and a lot of things. And the meeting I was watching, there seemed to be some intention of trying to get those in front of the town this Q4 meeting. And my understanding is that probably is no longer an operative assumption. But Chris, can you address that and any other things that you see coming for the fall town meeting that we should be preparing to address?
So the meeting in the fall will typically include free cash distribution and perhaps some other cleanup like that. I expect that there will be, I know there's going to be discussion in front of the select board about several potential water front related, harbor front related articles. One that would establish power to create aquaculture and shellfish regulations. Another that might deal with regulation of the water sheet. And there might be one to update the harbor committee. I'm not sure if that will be ready. I think the other two will be. I expect the select board will take them up probably on August and start talking about them. The I'm not aware of any other bylaw changes that are kicking around. I think, again, I we'll have to see what the zoning working group, which was just reformed last night and with new members appointed, does. I think there's a very short window. They have to have proposals really ready by the beginning of October at the latest to get in front of a December meeting. And that would be stuff that would be absolutely non-controversial. So I'm thinking that it's probably more likely they'll end up, unless there's some very tactical changes that are very simple, we'll probably wait till the spring, just from a timing perspective. And then there might be some roads and sidewalks things that come up. It's possible, depending on what kind of funding availability there is. And if nothing else, at least authorize money to do design and things of that sort. You know, with depending on what kind of cash the town has available at the time.
Okay. So I think with respect to that agenda item and the following one concerning committee updates and liaison assignments, that discussion isn't quite ripe yet, as we know what's coming. You know, if somebody's coming with a lot of zoning and planning, we should have people who are willing to jump into that. You know, when we meet next, I'll ask Chris for a further update about what's likely to be on that warrant. Unless anybody objects, I'm going to jump ahead to topics not reasonably anticipated, because I've never actually had an item that I didn't anticipate more than 48 hours for the meeting, but I do. And it's a good one. Well, it's not a good one, but it's not a, it's a development. I want to mark it. I got an email from Adam Amon. He essentially is leaving our committee effective in late July because he's moving. It'll be outside of Cohasset. And he expressed his that he was sorry to leave this group. I thought it would be appropriate, and it's something I actually meant to do with some earlier changes, but if somebody can make a motion that the advisory committee expresses its thanks to Adam Amon for his service in the committee and wishes him, you know, extends their best wishes in the future, something to that effect, it would be a nice thing to do.
Sounds like you just made it.
I did. Somebody, I sort of, okay, I make the motion I just made. Patrick, did
I'll
you
second.
get enough of that? Did you get enough of that? Perfect. Okay, we have a motion. It's been seconded. Vote by roll call. Gina Stino,
Aye.
Mike Barclay,
Aye.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman is an aye as well. I just, you know, he was sorry to be going. You know, he didn't say anything else, and if he did, I probably wouldn't talk about it in a taped online meeting, but he did say that he was sorry to be leaving us, and we're sorry to see him go. He's a bright guy and really engaged. Rolling back.
Can I ask who seconded that motion? I didn't get that down.
Mary.
Mary, I think.
Okay. All right, got
in
it.
there. We should move back to approval of minutes. And to that end, I would refer everyone to an email from Patrick to all of us. Look at the date of that.
Monday, Tuesday.
Oh,
Tuesday at 9:04 a.m. That email attaches 4 sets of minutes. So I thought I would, we should, can somebody remind me, do we have a practice about voting them all separately or as a group? I think we typically do them separately. Yeah, which we should, because there may be amendments or something. So can I have a motion concerning whether the advisory committee approves the minutes of the Thursday, March 31, 2022 meeting?
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
I only have 3 sets. Can you tell me what the 4th is? I have March 22nd, March 30th, and March 31st. I must have missed one.
April 27th. There was one email that had all 4, maybe.
Yeah, I mustn't have scrolled down enough. April what?
27.
27. Okay.
Yeah, that's the 4th one. So with respect to the March 31 minutes, I may be taking these out of order, but I'm taking them in the order they're attached to my email. Can I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve them.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Does anybody have any comments?
I have a correction.
Certainly.
Section 1, school department budget presentation, the split is 61-39.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments?
Did I have 62-38? I can't remember what I had.
Yes, you did.
Off by 1.
1% of enough money is real money. So
Yes.
And trust me, there'd be a lot of conversation about it. So
any other comments or concerning this? So I'll ask if we'll vote to approve these minutes as amended by Jean's comment.
So moved.
So moved.
I'll second.
Jean seconds. So we'll vote by roll call. Jean Stino,
Aye.
Mike Barclay,
Aye.
Fran Collins.
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler.
I was not present, so I'm going to abstain.
Abstain, and Rob Hillman, I am an aye. So moving to the next set of minutes, my packet, I'm looking at minutes dated March 22, 2022. Does everybody have those in front of them?
I'll move them.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? This was a joint meeting. So it was mostly just listening to, we don't appear to have taken any votes. Anybody have any comments? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call. Gina Stino,
Aye.
Mike Barclay,
Aye.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman is an aye. So moving on to the 4th set of advisory minutes. Minutes of a meeting Wednesday, March 30, 2022. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Jean, a second. Mary, discussion, corrections.
Patrick, can I
Comments?
just note that those were really good minutes?
Thank you. Duly noted.
Let the record reflect.
I wasn't there and I felt like I was.
Whoa.
Outstanding. Okay, hearing none, we have a motion and a second, I think, Patrick, I heard that, so we'll move to a vote. Gina Stino,
Aye.
Mike Barclay,
Aye.
Fran Collins.
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Abstain.
you abstained, Meg Wheeler.
Abstain.
Okay, Rob Hillman, says I spoke, so I suppose I was there, so I will not abstain and I'll vote in the affirmative. So then we're moving to our final set of advisory minutes.
April 27th.
April 27.
Mike
Does everybody
Barkley.
have those in
Andy
front of
Barkley.
them? Can I have a motion first?
I'll make a motion to approve the advisory committee minutes for April 27th, 2022.
Can I just raise a point of order? In those,
Sure.
minutes, it states that we already approved the minutes of March 22, 30, and 31.
Does it?
Yep.
Oh, you're right.
No, that's well, it's listed as documents received, but it doesn't record the vote, or does it down at the bottom?
Down at the bottom.
No. So
On a roll
what,
call, all present members voted aye.
where am I? Approval of, oh, there it is. It's an orphan. Well, we've now voted to approve them twice. They're exceptionally.
I'm looking at my notes too, and I did write down that we approved 6-0, the 22nd, the 23rd, and the 30th.
So
Okay.
here's where the problem lies. I'll explain myself. I wasn't at the April 27th meeting, so I didn't have any notes that they had ever been approved. So Mike, I think, sent me those April 27th minutes, about a month ago or so. And I said, great, he's prepared the minutes. I didn't open them and read them. I found minutes that I had prepared and didn't see them on the website. So thought, we haven't approved these minutes that I prepared. So I sent them around again, and you've all read them again. And
And they triggered no memories. But we did make a couple of corrections.
Yeah.
So I would submit the ones that in the form we approved them tonight. And but we do know, at least we all think, that the meeting minutes that we're looking at on April 27 are not. So I think I had a motion, and then Mary at a point of memory. And can we have a second to the motion to approve these? Anyone?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion of these minutes?
No.
Okay, then a vote by roll call. Gina Stino,
Aye.
Mike Barclay,
Aye.
Brandon Collins.
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Dane, I wasn't there.
okay, Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman is an aye. So we have some approved minutes and some very approved minutes. I think, Patrick, why don't we do this? I'm going to take one last run through some notes I have to see if we can put anything together for the October meeting that went missing.
Okay.
Maybe we put together either some skeletal minutes or, we just acknowledge on the record that, we just don't have minutes to approve for that meeting, and then stop worrying about it.
Yes.
I'll see if I can find some notes, but they weren't in the notebook I usually use, so,
Yeah.
no.
I just note for the record that the prior year, when Gina Stino was the clerk, I'm sorry, not Gina Stino, when Jean Healy Dippold was the clerk of the advisory committee, it's missing scores of minutes for that year, so.
That ones that didn't make it to the town file.
Not on the website, so I assume that they're not on the
Yeah.
town file. I don't know whether they're.
All right.
I wasn't on
I'll
the
take-
advisory committee then, so.
Yeah, I'll take a look. It's possible that there were minutes that were approved that just didn't get sent to be filed. So let me look back and see what I have in my inbox and see if I can fix that. And-
There's also another issue I'll raise just about minutes, is that occasionally from time to time, especially in connection with town meetings, we post meetings, for example, if we need to take a vote before town meeting, and then never convene a meeting. So sometimes there'll be an agenda listed for a particular date and then no minutes, but that's because no meeting was ever called to order.
Yeah, and we don't need to make ghost minutes.
Yeah,
I don't
I
think,
agree.
I've never heard that. Mary, I saw your hand up.
Patrick, I would just say, since you've been clerk and doing such a superlative job, we're quite organized. A couple of years back, I think it was 3 years, I spent months trolling around looking for minutes because it was kind of minutes by committee at that point. Meg, myself, Rob, Tom, it was a group. So, but it is confusing. It would be good. And I wonder if there's a way we could notify the clerk, or Beth Anderson is probably the more appropriate person. If we don't convene a meeting, if there's some way that she can note that. Because I don't think she can pull the posting off. That would not be correct.
Right,
Just so it doesn't look like there's a hole.
yeah,
That makes sense.
good idea.
So that brings us to, I didn't put it on the agenda, but I think it's implicit that what do people think about a time frame for a next meeting? I know this is a tough time of year. Go ahead, anybody?
Yeah, this vacation schedules are coming up probably for some folks.
How about I do this, rather than everybody sit on a Zoom call with their personal calendars, I'll circulate an email with some dates and people can get back to me with their availability. And if I can find a good date, I'll do so. So that seems to be the most practical thing. So,
You're talking about a Wednesday during
correct.
August, presumably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Early mid, I think, but we'll see. We'll see where people are at, literally and figuratively. We'll also see if we have to do this live, which I don't necessarily object to.
Can I ask another question about our membership?
Sure.
Colin, you were mentioned that we have a resignation by Adam Amon. Were there any other vacancies that needed to come up in this cycle, or that were filled, or are going to be filled, or renewal?
I should have mentioned that. We had 3 of our members who were completing their 3-year term and were therefore eligible to remain for 3 more years, whereupon their sentence is complete and they're not eligible to stand again, at least not right away. Those 3 were Meg, Mary, and Fran, all 3 of whom agreed to re-enlist. And there was a meeting of the committee that's called the Troika, which is the town moderator and the chair of the select board and the chair of advisory. And we quickly and enthusiastically reappointed the 3. And there's another candidate for the seat, and we're having that had expressed interest in an open seat. We're having that discussion and some other discussions, but we'll be so we're in good shape. It's a pity to lose Adam, but we should manage to stay with the bulk of the team. So does that answer your question?
Very good, thank you.
It's good. Unless there's anything further, it's time for everybody's favorite motion. Adjournment, yes, anybody? Bueller?
I'll make a
Motion to
motion to adjourn. Whoop, okay.
I think Patrick beat you to the punch, but
Yeah.
I think Gene's the second,
I
so.
was holding back because I didn't want to have that reputation, but I will second it.
Very well. So vote by roll call. Gene Estino,
Aye.
Mike Barclay,
Aye.
Fran Collins.
I think he signed off.
I think he dropped. Okay,
that's
it's
weird.
implicitly an aye. Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman is an aye. Thank you very much. I've got 3 or 4 things on my list of things to do. I'll get on them as soon, and I'll circulate some proposed dates probably over this weekend. Well, I'll circulate dates over this weekend for dates in August. And we're adjourned. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Enjoy the nice weather, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Gene, thanks for the hint on the email. I got it. We're done.